I will be telling you guys about the reasons I ended an 8-year relationship. Let's first start with the background. So I met my now ex-boyfriend back when I was in high school, where he came into the restaurant where I was working. He wrote his number down on a napkin. I gave him a call, and the rest is kind of history. So very storybook cute there. We dated for about a year before I went off to college. Now, I still need to do it. I talk about it, but that one's another one that's like kind of personal, where I want to do a video about my college experience because it wasn't the best college experience. It wasn't bad by any means, but I do think that the relationship that I was in kind of impeded on a lot of my college experiences. So I was very much in the mindset of, okay, if I have this boyfriend while I'm going off to college, we will be doing long distance. So I don't want to do anything that's going to make him concerned, that's going to have him questioning if I'm being loyal, being faithful, while all this crazy, raging college experience is happening. So because of that, like I've mentioned in other videos, I never went to a single party. I did not drink at all while I was in college. I didn't join any clubs or any type of student organizations. And the reason for that is because I was still working while I was in college. I was going home every single weekend to continue to work my server job. And half of that was because I did need money for college. I needed to pay for things, but also because he was still near my hometown. So I went home every single weekend to see him. And then during the weeks, about every other week, he would come up to college and see me. So we were not going to the same college together, but we were still seeing each other multiple times a week. It was hardly long distance. We were seeing almost too much of each other, where I couldn't really expand my wings during college and find out who I was outside of old high school JC. I can't even say my own freaking name. Golly. But I was in love. I was very happy with him. We were starting to think about our future, and we're like, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. And he was an incredible boyfriend. He was always there for me when I needed him to be, especially during the stressors of college. He made the time from his own schedule to come up and visit me during college. And it was a great relationship. It was a wonderful, wonderful relationship. So even during college, we were thinking about our future, and we were actually in the process of buying a condo. So when I was about 20 years old, he bought a condo. And mind you, he's only a year older than me. So at 21 years old, he was already basically a property owner. He bought this condo, and I moved in with him while still in college. So instead of living in the dorm rooms on campus, I now was way back an hour away from my campus, living with him and commuting to campus. So this again kind of added to the idea that I didn't have a full college experience because I wasn't even on campus anymore. I was living with my boyfriend. But I felt so adult, you guys. I was elated. I was like, dang, I'm getting a head start on property ownership and being a homeowner and a little housewife, because here we had this condo where we were going to flip it. We tore out the floors. We tore out all of the countertops in the kitchen. We redid the bathroom. We did a full like flipper flop house renovation on that thing. And it was so fun to like live out my Pinterest dreams and go and pick out granite and see what kind of paint we wanted to paint our kitchen counters. So it was not our counters, our cabinets. You guys get it. So it was a super exciting time in my life because I thought, how should I say this? I thought I was like better than everyone in college, because I was like, wow, you guys are still like going to frat parties. Meanwhile, I have to pay an HOA and mow my lawn like an adult. So it was kind of this weird like sense of, I felt just so much older than everybody, but it was such a fun time, moving in together with your significant other, where at this point we had been together for 3 years. It was kind of like the next big step in our relationship. The next big step that happened after that was we were shopping around for pets, because I have always grown up with multiple animals in the house. That I was living in this condo with my boyfriend, and I was thinking, I need an animal to come up and say hi to me. Like when I get home from work, I need something to get excited to see me. Like, yeah, you're good enough, but I need a little furry creature to do that. So we were like shopping for animals. I found this one dog that I absolutely fell in love with. We went to a shelter. She was a German Shepherd, and she had one green eye and one brown eye. And we're like, oh my gosh, look at her eyes. Isn't she so pretty? Through the gate of this animal shelter, we told this dog to sit, shake, and lay down. And she knew all her commands. And we're like, what the heck? Like, who gave up this dog? This is a trained dog. How did this dog end up in the shelter? So we talked to the shelter, and they said, if you want that dog, like she's going to be euthanized this weekend. So you kind of need to make up your mind. So we left, and I remember leaving like crying, thinking like, that dog's going to be killed. Like we have to get her. And he was like, no, we're not ready. Like we don't have the yard finished. That was another project we were working on. We didn't have our patio grass down yet. We were definitely prematurely shopping for a dog, and so I was a little bit upset. But a few days later, he comes in through the door with that dog, who we named Pop Tart. So Pop Tart was a wonderful, wonderful dog. She was so high energy. She was always needed to be walked. But again, I had that little furry companion to come and greet me when I got home from work, which was really nice. So again, we were taking very big steps in our relationship. We had bought a condo together, moved in together, and now have a dog together. I, at this time, finished up my college degree. I actually graduated early because, again, I was like, I don't need college. I just need the degree, you know? Like, I'm already so far ahead of all these other people that I'm ready to just get started on the next step in my life. So the next step in my life, I went and got a really good job and I got fired from it. Yeah. Make sure to check out that video because that was a demerit in my resume for the rest of my life. But I did go get a big girl job. I got fired from it. That was another big depression episode in my life, a very good life lesson, however. But he was there for me. He helped me through getting fired. I don't think I would have made it through getting fired if I didn't live with him because he was so supportive, not only emotionally and mentally, but also financially. You know, we were living together and I couldn't help pay the bills for quite a long time because it was so hard for me to find a new job that he was absolutely there for me. And I am still forever grateful for him for that. So after that, I went back to serving because I just could not find a job with my degree and because I had a termination on my record, which is not ideal for people looking to hire qualified candidates. Go figure. So I went back to serving and I love serving, so no regrets there. I was there for about another year and a half before starting to look for other jobs that are more applicable with my degree and are going to get me further in life than serving. Nothing against servers, but it was just my time to move on. And the interesting part about looking for a new job, being in a relationship, was that I felt limited into where I could apply and where I could potentially get a job. So being in the marketing, advertising, business kind of field, all of those jobs are in LA or in San Diego or in kind of like the bigger cities. Where I was out in the Inland Empire, you know, in just like very suburbia area, that there weren't too many marketing jobs. It was kind of like dentist's office or hair salons, like no great marketing jobs, because the only good one I got fired from. So because I did feel a little limited because we were living together, I ended up getting a job about 20 minutes outside of where we lived. And it was only part-time. And I remember thinking that this was a little defeating to me because I was like, wow, here I am with like this incredible college degree and I'm getting like a part-time job just kind of near my hometown. Like that's not what life's supposed to be. But this part-time job that I did get is actually the one where I'm currently still working, where it was for a community college, which was wonderful because it had that prestige that I was looking for. Like it wasn't just for some small business, it was for the local community college and there was an ability to move up, and it was also just really great resume builder within that career field. So I was really excited. And then during this time, my boyfriend, he got a huge promotion at his work. I don't want to give too many details about him, but he got a wonderful promotion that he absolutely worked his butt off. He so deserved it. The issue was that his new promotion was now an hour away from where our condo was. So this was kind of the next step in our relationship where we said, okay, I work in this city over here. He works in this city over here. We're probably going to need to move to the city that's directly in between. Now, the city that was directly in between is an up-and-coming city in Southern California. And when I say up-and-coming, what I mean by that is it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, but in 10 years, it'll be booming with shopping centers, with all these houses, and just kind of like it wasn't there yet. So we were looking in this area and we're like, all right, well, this makes sense to move here because it's too long of a commute for him not to move to the middle. And I was only working part-time, so it didn't really make sense for us to live so close to my work. So we start house shopping, and house shopping was so fun, such a fun experience. You know, we would do that as a kid. Like my family would take us to open houses and like the kids would be like, this is my room. No, this is my room. Whoa, could you imagine having a swimming pool? Like, oh my gosh, this house has an extra den with a pool table. Like that's insane. So being an actual adult and going house shopping, thinking, oh my gosh, I could actually live here and make my life in these houses. This is insane, like this is crazy, but let's go house hunting. So we house hunted for several months, and it was an interesting market at the time, not nearly as bad as it is now, but we were putting offers on houses and not getting them because people were coming in with cash offers. And, you know, we had a lot of down payment because we were going to sell the condo. But it was just kind of like a weird time. But we ended up finding this one house, and I'll never forget. We went to this open house. We weren't even planning on going there. We didn't go with our realtor. It was just an open house. We walk into this house, and it was gorgeous. It was way bigger than we could have ever imagined, but it was stunning. Just absolutely what you could ever want in terms of an entertainment type house. So the kitchen was open concept. The island is like as big as my living room is now. This giant island that like two of us could lay down on. It opened up into the living room with a TV section, the whole dining room. It was stunning. It had a wonderful backyard for our dog. And it had 3 bedrooms. No, that's not even right. 1, 2. It had 4 bedrooms plus a den/office. It was 2,600 square feet, which is insane because the house that I grew up in is like half of that. And we saw this house and we're like, this house is beautiful. It's turnkey. I didn't enjoy living through a renovation with our previous condo that I was like, we don't need to fix up anything in this house. It's great. A little out of budget. But he looked at me and he was like, if you want this house, this is the house that we'll grow old together in. And I said, yeah, I kind of do. So we sold the condo, put a down payment on this house, put in an offer. We got the house, mind you. And the next step was to move in together. Now, kind of a funny little side story that I still like to tell because it's nuts. We sold our condo and we were buying this house, but the escrows didn't actually line up. So we had to completely move out of the condo, but we couldn't move into the new house yet. So we put everything, every possession, everything we've ever owned into his parents' garage for a week and a half and lived with them for a week and a half and then moved into our new house. And it was the most stressful 2 weeks of my entire life because we had to move twice. Like I'm talking couches, beds, like big old tables. Moving is not easy. And it was such a nightmare to have to do that twice, but it was all worth it because we moved into this gorgeous, gorgeous house into this new city. We're in this new house. We're excited to start this new chapter in our lives because this felt like the most adult thing you could do. So at 22, 23 years old, we were homeowners. Now, how I kind of like to describe it is he was the homeowner. I actually didn't put any money towards it. I wasn't on the lease by any means. It was more of like I lived with him and the intention was for us to get married and it's our house. But kind of how the financial setup worked was he bought the house using the money from the condo that he sold. Again, everything in his name. And I had purchased everything within the condo. I bought the couch, the table, like the bed, most of the furniture and all of like the decor pieces. So it was kind of like he bought the house and I bought everything in it. But over the next year, as we're living in this ginormous house, we're like, oh my God, this house is huge. We need to start replacing some of the like starter furniture we had. You know, we had like hand-me-down tables and IKEA beds. We wanted something that was going to last a lifetime. So I was only working part-time, like I mentioned. He just got this huge promotion. So he started replacing things within the house with his own money kind of thing. That'll come into play later. So when I say that this house was huge, I mean, it was huge. It was more than we needed. And we actually joked that there was a whole wing of the house that we had that we never even went to. We had 2 guest bedrooms. We had one room that we kind of turned into a gym. So over the next couple years, we were buying like a workout bench, yoga mats, stretchy bands, like all that kind of stuff. And then we had this big old office/library that just had all of my books, but we barely went onto that side of the house because all we did on this side of the house was our bedroom, our living room, the dining room, and the kitchen. And it's so funny now in hindsight thinking like that was way too big of a house, but almost like I don't ever want a house that big again because it was a lot to clean, but it was also just a waste of space. But again, during this time, it was an investment for our future that, hey, these could be future kids' bedrooms someday, or hey, when our friends come over and visit because we want to entertain, we have multiple guest rooms for them. They don't need to sleep on an air mattress or the couch. They have their own guest room and shower. So again, it was very much of we were planning for the future with this house. So that's when buying the house, how should I say this? Buying the house and moving into the house was kind of the start to the end of our relationship. So again, I was working part-time. He was working full-time. I had the dog. I was in the house a lot of the time. And again, it was a big house that I started, how should I say this? We kind of started falling into roles, the stereotypical gender roles, where he was the working husband, where he'd kind of work all day. He'd come home at night. I would have dinner ready for him and we would talk about work that day, go to bed, repeat. Being the woman in that situation was very hard for me because I only worked part-time. So I'd only go into the office for, 4 or 5 hours each day, or I'd go for 8 hours, maybe 3 times a week. Then the rest of the time, I was doing laundry every single day. I was cooking so much, you guys. I cooked more than I've ever cooked and will ever cook in my life. But every night, I was making something new and different for dinner. I was cleaning and mopping and sweeping every other day. I was loading the dishwasher and doing dishes. I'd be cleaning the patio. I also had to walk our dog twice a day because she had so much energy that even just playing with her in the backyard wasn't enough. So I had to take her for walks. I was just always doing something related to the house. And because of the job that my boyfriend worked, he worked a very messy job. I was doing so much laundry. Like I can't fathom how much, because I only do laundry like once a week now because it's just me and it's just pajamas. But I was doing a load of laundry every single day. I was cooking dinner every single night. It was just the same routine where I just felt like a housewife, is how I would describe it. A huge part of feeling this way was I was now kind of in the middle of nowhere. In this new up and coming city means that there wasn't that much to do, but I was also so separated from my friends and family. My family was now an hour and a half drive away from me, so it didn't make sense for me to just go pop by and visit. And all of our friends kind of had scattered around the country, basically, that we only got together for big occasions. So it was kind of difficult to maintain friendships because I'd be like, hey, you guys want to come over? And they'd be like, no, you're an hour and a half away. Like, we don't want to come visit. They did come one year for New Year's, which was wonderful. That was such a great time. And I was like, oh, I love entertaining in this big new house. But then they also kind of set the precedent of, we're not going to come to the middle of nowhere, like for vacation. Like, no offense, but you guys aren't in a big city. We want to go and explore and visit, maybe we'll come pop by, but it was very evident that my friends weren't going to come visit us as much as we anticipated, being in the middle of nowhere. And so here we were with this big giant entertaining house with no one to entertain. There was another party that we hosted for my parents' anniversary where we had a lot of family and friends come over for that. And so that was wonderful. Again, I got to scratch that itch of wanting to entertain a little bit. But while everybody was impressed with our house and the size of it and how beautiful and upgraded it was, they'd also mentioned, wow, you're kind of in the middle of nowhere, They're not going to pop over, drive an hour and a half just for a game night, It was very much like we were out of the way, and I just felt super separated from the life that I had created over the past 20 plus years. So one interesting thing that happened that I'll tell you guys about, that's a little bit more on the personal side, was I was working part-time at my job, and my boss called me into his office and he said, hey, how would you feel about moving up to full-time? There's a lot more roles within this job, a lot more duties that we'd like to give to you if you have the availability. And I told my boss, I was like, yes, like I've been trying to work my way up, like I'm trying to get more hours and I want to progress in my career field. This is such a huge opportunity. I remember I went home that day to my boyfriend and I told him, guess what? Like they offered me full-time hours and I'm going to start working full-time. Isn't that exciting? At this time, I was part-time for a year and I was only doing social media, that they were going to expand my role to a larger leadership role. And I told him, isn't that exciting? He's going to move me to full-time hours. And I'll never forget, he said, but I want you at home with me. And that... And when he said that, it was kind of like the glass crashing down on me. Ugh. Because it always felt like, am I going to always have to compromise for this relationship and not live up to my full potential because I was destined to be a housewife? And so that's when over the next few months, I started hyperanalyzing my role within the household. I saw that every single day I was doing laundry, I was making dinner, I was walking the dog, I was sweeping the floors and loading the dishwasher, wake up and repeated. And I started thinking about my college experience and how, I never really got to party, I never drank, I never really got to hook up with people or make new friends or travel abroad kind of thing. And then I started thinking about my life in the future of, will I be able to travel? Will I be able to have an illustrious career in a new city? Could we live apart if it meant something for my career? I was always sacrificing for his career, but I never even got the opportunity for him to sacrifice for my career because it wasn't an option, it seemed for me. It felt like I wasn't even allowed to apply to those jobs. Another big issue was that he didn't like that I would hang out with other people without him, and not in a possessive or manipulative way by any means. It was more so of like, oh, you're going to go see your friends without me? Like, dang, I wish I could go. That I would kind of feel bad that I couldn't do things without him because he saw us as such a unit, where I saw us as two individuals that, were together. But it wasn't that way for him. And I remember one fight we also got into was he didn't like that a lot of people in my family take vacations without their significant other, without their husband, or without their wife. Whereas I'm very much on the side of like, if you can't go because of work, that doesn't mean I shouldn't go. Like, I should be able to go on trips with friends, go on trips with family just because you can't. And that was always something we kind of butted heads about. And I saw that more and more, where I became so isolated in this new city that I was seeking out trips with friends, or I was seeking out going out with friends or coworkers after work. And he kind of felt left out of that. He kind of felt like, that's not fair that you get to go out and have fun when I'm working. And so I got more and more isolated, and I hyper fixated on the fact that I was just a housewife at like 23 years old. The other big thing that I learned about myself in that last year of living in that house was that I don't want children. I was looking at my life, and I was looking at my dog, who I loved so freaking much, and how much work it took to take care of her. I kept thinking, I can't have children. One, because I'd be doing it completely by myself. Here I am, like, taking care of this manor like a duchess or something, and I couldn't even handle that. What am I going to do when we have children and I have to be there for them all the time? I could only work part-time because I'd have to take care of the kids. And I started to resent the idea and hate the idea before it could even happen. And so those feelings started growing deeper and deeper, in the sense of, oh my gosh, I don't want children. And it's not an issue of having children with him. It's very much me. I don't want kids. And then I started thinking, I don't think I ever want to get married, ever, ever, ever. Here I am with a boy that I love so deeply. We kind of checked all of the boxes in our life. We're here at the precipice of getting married and having kids. And I couldn't be more terrified. I couldn't think of how much that would limit me in all of the things that I wanted to do in my life, and how it kind of felt like I would become a prisoner to that house. Now, one thing you guys should know, again, because every side has two stories, is that I didn't communicate these feelings well to him. I didn't at all share these thoughts that I was having, and these worries and these fears. And I just let them marinate, and I just let the resentment grow so much. And it's like he never even knew. He thought I was so happy. He thought I was happy at my job, happy with the household. And I wasn't. And I didn't tell him. I didn't tell him how I was feeling. And so again, it all started boiling. And we got to a point in our relationship where neither of us were very happy. And a lot of that was my feelings, in the sense that I was kind of being so guarded and not letting myself enjoy life with him, because I kept thinking to myself, I'm going to have to end this soon. Like, this can't go on for much longer. Meanwhile, he was so stressed with his job. He saw the way that I was kind of acting. And so we did have a conversation at one point of like, what do we think we missed out on life? What do we feel like we missed? At this point, we were dating for essentially 7.5 years. And I told him, I've known you since I was 16 years old, and I don't know who I am outside of this relationship. I don't know if I've grown since being 16 years old with you. And he also kind of shared that, like, I feel like I also missed out on dating other people or traveling as well. But I am in this with you 100%. Like, you're the person that I want to be with. Like, let's make this work. I didn't share that sentiment, and I kind of said no. So what I did was, I knew that if I were to have a big confrontation with him, which, if you can't tell, I am not good at confrontation. I was not a very good communicator back then. I'd like to think that I have greatly improved over the last several years that I haven't been with him. But I knew that if I were to have this big conversation with him, that I wouldn't be able to say what I wanted to say, that I would kind of cave to whatever he said and would just kind of like live the rest of my life agreeing to it. So what I did instead was I wrote a 4-page essay, essentially, of all of the reasons why I wasn't happy and that I was leaving. So I wrote on this paper, I said, I have my worries about certain things in our relationship that I don't think are fair for me to share on YouTube by any means. It's a little too personal, but there were other things where I was like, I don't think I want to have kids. I don't think I ever want to get married, because if I ever did want to get married, I would obviously get married to you. But the fact that I'm having so many fears and so many doubts about it kind of tells me that maybe that's never going to be in my future. And I don't even remember what I said. I probably still didn't even communicate everything that I was feeling, but I just kind of said, I just need some time away. And I packed a bag and I drove to my parents' house, and at like 9 p.m. at night, I remember I sat down on my dad's bed and I was like, Dad, it's over. And he lectured me and he supported me, but that was probably the hardest night of my life, leaving this relationship and leaving this life that I had known for so long. So we talked a little bit more after that, and I told him I'm not coming back. And I told him, you keep everything. I don't want anything. I don't want a single piece of furniture. I also told him that he could keep Poppy, our dog, because he'd be alone in that house and he would need the companionship, and that I'd miss her like crazy. And that was probably the hardest part about all of it, was leaving my dog. But I went back a couple weeks later and I gathered the rest of my things. I left him passwords to, put all of the utilities in his name, and I left. And it was really weird ending that relationship, because my family called it the divorce, because we were together for almost 8 years, that it did kind of feel like a divorce. And I had a lot of family members who didn't talk to me for like several months because they were so upset with me. Mostly because, they thought of him as my husband at that point, that they treated him like a family member as well, that this came out of nowhere for so many people. And it really did come out of nowhere for some people, because I never shared that I was unhappy with anybody. Nobody knew what I was feeling, because I just kind of kept everything so bottled up. And people would be like, did you fight? Like, were you guys fighting a lot? Like, or did it go downhill when you guys bought the house together? And I would tell them, no, we never fought. Like, we were so happy. And that's why so many people were mad at me, because they couldn't understand, well, if nothing was wrong, why did you leave? And I had to explain, because I see a different future for myself than what I saw being in that relationship. I saw my future as moving to different cities, trying different careers, traveling the world. I see myself as not having kids. To this day, I still don't think I ever want to get married. And I kind of learned that I value myself over that relationship. And so many people couldn't wrap their heads around that. So many people were like, yeah, but nothing was wrong. Like, you couldn't go on trips with him. Like, you couldn't get a new job somewhere else and you guys moved together. And I had to tell them, no, where that relationship is going is not what I see for my life. I only get one life to live. And I feel like we had ticked all the boxes and we had grown together so much, but there was no more growing left to do. And I could only grow outside of that relationship. So the next 6 months to a year were so incredibly hard, because people thought that I just I left, bye. I want to go hook up with people and I want to go party and drink and I want to go travel. It was the hardest 6 months of my life, you guys. The guilt that ate me up, how much I missed my dog, and the comfort that you have being with somebody for that long is gone. I didn't have those inside jokes to share with anybody. When something exciting happened, I didn't have anybody to call. My life was basically starting over. I moved back in with my parents at 25 years old, and I was starting from the bottom, and I felt very alone and kind of had no direction of where my life was going. And it still just sucks that everybody thinks that I was fine. It was my choice, so nothing's wrong. No, it was so hard. It was so hard because I still had so much love for him. I just don't want to be with him, if that makes sense. And I would say that he didn't handle it that great, which I totally don't blame him for, because I'd never communicated those feelings and I really did just leave. And I'll never forget one thing he said to me. He said, "You're just giving up without even giving me a chance." And it's true. I kind of just gave up on the relationship. I kind of just ended things and I left. I didn't fight for it. And I didn't try to go through the steps of making it work. And that's 100% on me. But the reason for that is I had already decided in my mind a year before breaking up with him that it's not going where I want my own life to go. So it was very hard. It was very hard for me, and I know it was extremely hard for him. But it was just the hardest. It was just hard. It was just hard. So that was almost 3 years ago, and I talk to people now and I tell them that was the best decision I could have made for myself. And as painful as it was, and considering the fact it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do, it was the right decision. I am happier than I've ever been. I was able to move to a new city and almost change career fields. I was able to move out of my parents' house for one, but also develop new friendships, strengthen old friendships. And I have so many goals and dreams and ambitions that I don't think I even would have had being in that relationship. I want to travel the world. I never want to live in the same city for more than a few years. I have so many aspirations that I have a whole vision board that you guys would think I'm some crazy, insane dreamer, but I want to make all of those things happen. And I wouldn't have been able to pursue that if I didn't leave the relationship. But it's just been a whirlwind since that relationship ended, and I think I'm better off for it. But that's the story of my breakup, of why I ended a relationship for 8 years. A lot of you guys may not agree with me. A lot of you may think that I kind of copped out, took the easy way out, and didn't even try, which is absolutely fair.